Hi, my name is David Long, and I am one of the senior consultants as well as the founder of Version 2 Consulting in San Francisco. We've been talking a little bit about, throughout these series, some of the issues that come up with OS X and some of the misunderstood features and troubleshooting tools that people use and often without really understanding what they are. And one of the big ones is actually something called RepairPermissions, which you run either through disk utility or potentially the command line. And what we want to talk about today is really what RepairPermissions is, how RepairPermissions works, and finally when you should actually repair the permissions of the files and folders on your computer. So first off, what gets repaired? RepairPermissions is utilizing a database to actually compare the existing permissions of files and folders on your computer to what those files and folders permissions should have been set to at the time they were installed. They must be installed via an installer, and RepairPermissions will never repair any file or folder that you create. Typically, the permissions get screwed up or messed up due to an inconfigured or misconfigured installer, or it's because somebody manually changed a file or folder and that they didn't actually know what they were doing and set those permissions incorrectly. So let's then look and see what or why that is. And there's a couple of different ways of seeing how RepairPermissions work, but we really need to know first what actually gets repaired. And the first thing you can do is you can actually run a command to list the standard packages that are repaired via the command RepairPackages. And in this case, we can see that we repair things like our updates, remote desktop, Oxford dictionaries, additional speech voices, the BSD subsystem, as well as some of the essentials and base operating system information. What seems to be missing from this is any of our applications, any of our files, any of our folders that we've created. And that is honestly because those items actually aren't ever repaired. The only things that are truly repaired are those things installed by Apple for those reasons. And so we're going to look at this in a little more detail in a second, why that is. But first we need to understand then how RepairPermissions work. And so the first thing that happens when you install an application via an installer, it will then save something called a bill of materials or a BOM file, and that gets stored on your computer. If you would like to see all of the packages that were installed on your computer, you can use a command called pkgutil, as well as another command called lsbom to actually read those packages, the files that were installed, as well as the permissions and what they were set to. So let's actually go and look at some of these commands. So the first one we want to do is actually see the command to look at all the packages that were installed on our computer. So we can use the command pkgutil. We want to read the packages, and pkgutil actually lives in /user/sbin. Now if you know a little bit about the command line, you know it's possible you don't need to include that. I'm doing it just to be complete. So if I hit return, I will then get a list of all the applications that were installed and the package receipts for each one of those applications. You will notice that I have all installers here, including if I have FileMaker Dictionaries, FileMaker English Language Pack, FileMaker A12 Application, the labels, and the publishing. So each one of these are individual different packages that were installed. I may have only double-clicked on one item, but in fact it may have run multiple installers. In addition to that, there may be some items that are for the update. So you can see here that these updates were run for iTunes Access. There was a Delta patch. My 10.8.2 Delta was also installed. Here's a supplemental, etc. And all these can just be updates that were run after the fact. And note though, none of these items are actually verified for RepairPermissions. That can be kind of unique and unusual because you may have a problem with MotionFX. You may have a problem with FileMaker. But in fact, those items are never actually installed. So let's go ahead and look at one of these bill of materials we talked about. So again, we're going to use the command lsbom, which happens to live in /user/bin. And we have some flags we want to add because we want to actually organize this in a certain way so that it's really human readable. All of our receipts live in var db receipts, but there's a number of them, and so I actually want to list all the receipt possibilities, and I have 352 installs that I've done, but these are all the installed receipts that are available, and I can actually go through and look. Here's all the ones for Aperture, my airport utility. We also have our BSD subsystem is listed here, Chinese word list updates, on and on and on, and these are all the different installers that I have run. And so what I can do is I can actually just go find one of these, and I'm going to use, for no reason whatsoever, this mediafiles.bom, and I'll just copy that, and then I can paste it down here in the bottom into my command. So I'm actually going to read the BOM file for my media files, and I hit return, and it will actually list out all of them for me. Now, sorry, we have kind of some word wrapping going on here, but the idea is that these are the permissions of what should have been set for my file sv.lproj. It's owned by root, and the group is set to wheel. That's what it should have been set to. If, which again, this is not one of those items that is used, but if this was actually being considered, it would then go and verify that file, and if that file's permissions were wrong, it would then set it back to these default permissions. So once you have all that done, we can actually see a couple of interesting things. So this here is just an example of an output from lsbom. And let's notice two very important parts here. So number one is that first item is our library preferences folder, and the third, fourth, and fifth items are /system library, and system library extensions. And of course there's some other items below that. But the reason these ones are so important is because library preferences, system library, and system library extensions are all very important places that the permissions must be set accurately to. So these are just examples. We want to come back to this in a second once we look at the other details. So what happens about my applications? So again, not nearly every application is actually not repaired. And some applications, though, may be fixed collaterally because you run repair permissions. If you have an application inside of /applications and it is not working because you can't read it, it's possible that running repair permissions, which in theory would fix the applications folder, may also fix your application. That being the case, though, you can specify an application to be repaired simply by running the repair package command and then the package ID. So we can actually look at that command as well. So I have up here, we actually have our command repair packages, and we're going to go ahead and repair a given package. And because we were looking at the media files earlier, I'm just going to paste that right in. I'm going to hit return, and it's going to show us the output of verifying the files from the package, media files, and after that it will finish verifying. And now that I have my package repaired, then we can go back and we can look at when to perform a repair. And this is actually critical. So let's look at that original example. Again, we have this problem with our library preferences and our system library folders. And let's look at what the permission should truly be set for these different directories. So we're highlighting here /library/preferences so we can see, and the installer actually set two incorrect settings. Number one is it gave the group permission to write to that directory, but the admin group, not the wheel group, is set. And this is kind of interesting because, you know, in all honesty, this probably would still function properly because most users are not administrators and they're not members of wheel, so they wouldn't be able to write anyway, but this is still set incorrectly. So if we imagine for a moment that our repair permission process actually consulted all packages, it may actually set something incorrectly. And so that's actually not the case. So when you run repair permission, which you can do again in disk utility, or you can run it from the command line, not unlike we just did a moment ago, you can actually go and reset those permissions back to the way they were from quote unquote the factory. Remember, the repair permission list is a well-defined list. And because of what we just saw, we actually had a package that incorrectly configured the permissions. We wouldn't want to just consult all packages, but we do want to look at, again, the standard defaults. The other thing you can do is actually repair your home folder permissions. The only way to do that is to actually boot to the recovery partition. Once you're in the recovery partition, you're going to open up Terminal and type in the command reset password. That will launch the graphical interface for a reset password application. In the top left, you're going to hit or select the volume itself. From the list of user accounts, select the user and then click reset at the bottom right, which will go through and set the access level and the file level permissions for the top level directories in your home folder. You still may not be able to read or write to a file or folder that you expected to. If you created a file or folder on your desktop and you set the permissions to no access, running the home folder repair permission feature will not fix that file or folder. So to recap, it's very important to understand what it is that repair permissions does. Remember, it consults a well-defined list of installers. It compares the files and folders that were installed to the bill of materials, and any file and folder permissions that are not set correctly, it will change back to the way they were set from that installer. Remember, it will never repair any of your files or folders that you created. It won't repair any drag and drop installers, nor will it repair any item installed from a third-party installer. Mindvise is a great example of that and something that is actually widely used. But if it's a package and it was part of the original install pieces, it will be repaired. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.